Chapter 8. The guardrails of the void and the great calibration. As the new trajectory snapped into its higher octave, the timeline jumpers entered a phase known to the cosmic architects as the great calibration. It was one thing to catch a glimpse of a higher timeline. It was another entirely to stabilize the body and mind within it. When a soul steps off a lifetime of predictable, automated tracks, they do not instantly land on solid ground. They enter the in-between, a structural void where the old reality has collapsed, but the new one hasn't yet gathered the momentum to fully materialize. They are staggering, Enlil observed, leaning over the console of the dupe Shamati. His golden threads were still vibrating from the sudden mass departure. The friction of leaving the lower line is causing a temporal sickness. They have severed their anchors, but their fields are disoriented. Without structure, they will drift into the void and dissolve. They are not drifting, brother, Enki countered, his hands guiding the cool, blue luminescence of the Abzu upward, sending subtle ripples of grounding energy into the ether. They are shedding. You cannot carry the dense ballast of an old world into the architecture of a new one. The disorientation they feel is simply the rewiring of their internal compass. To the timeline jumpers on the ground, this phase felt like a profound, echoing silence. Sudden shifts in their physical geometry occurred. Friendships of 20 years vanished overnight without an argument. Long-held ambitions suddenly felt like dry ash in the mouth, and an intense, almost magnetic urge to change their physical surroundings, their diet, and their daily protocols took hold. They were experiencing the biological tax of the jump. The dense carbon-based programming of survival, conflict, and generational trauma was being forcefully wrung out of their nervous systems to make room for the pristine, crystalline frequency of the new track. Chapter 9. The sovereign household and the new ground Thoth raised his emerald stylus, drawing a sharp, multi-dimensional boundary line across the cosmic ledger. To stabilize a new timeline, Thoth declared, one must establish a localized grid. A sovereign cannot rule a void. They must bring the universal laws down into the soil, into the household, and into the bloodline. Down in the physical realm, the timeline jumpers who understood the prompt began to build. They stopped waiting for a global shift and instead turned their attention to the immediate radius of their own lives. They realized that the ultimate arc was not a physical ship, but a masterfully ordered life structure, the purification of elements. Recognizing that the old line was laced with distortion, they began purifying their immediate environments. They filtered their own water using the natural geometry of the earth, layering sand, charcoal, and stone to mirror the filtration systems of the ancient Abzu, the shielding of the household. They gathered their families, their children, and their kin, establishing clear, unyielding protocols of truth and communication. They refused to allow the frantic, chaotic frequencies of the old, collapsing timeline to pass through the thresholds of their homes, the coding of the bloodline. They began digging into their ancestral roots, mapping the names, the triumphs, and the unresolved knots of those who came before them. By consciously looking at their lineage, they extracted the pure gold of their ancestors' endurance, while legally and spiritually dissolving the old generational debts. Every home that adopted these protocols became an immovable anchor point on the earth. They were like small, high-frequency islands rising out of a receding ocean. Enlil's old matrix could no longer find a foothold in these spaces. They had successfully created localized realities governed by their own internal decrees.